Hey guys, and welcome back to Trash with a capital T. I'm your host Bobby, and here we apparently talk about trashy books all the time. We'll be doing some movie episodes in the upcoming future. I have plans. Maybe the next one, maybe the one after that. I don't know. We'll see. If you saw the thumbnail, which if you got here, you did. Today, we are talking about John Saul. He is a guy that I have learned a lot of people either love or they hate. There's not a lot in between. For some of you younger readers, you may not know who he is. He hasn't published since 2009. But he was someone who pumped out a lot of horror paperbacks that you would see all over the Walgreens, CVS, your drugstore, your grocery stores. They always had these fun, kind of lurid covers. You will get a taste of some of those as we go through the recommendations. Why John Saul? Well, sorry, it's a little sweaty in here because it's hot. Well, okay. Never mind. Why John Saul? I'm getting distracted. John Saul is one of those people. I went through a period where I read a ton of his books. It's not to say he was like suddenly my favorite author. He's a pretty okay writer. He's not the most amazing writer. He's a good storyteller. I think James Patterson, who I haven't really read a lot of, but that was one of the things he always says is he's not a great writer, he's a great storyteller. John Saul kind of falls into that. He writes these very fun, sometimes thrilling, sometimes kind of creepy yarns. He has tropes that he goes back to regularly, as a lot of pop authors do. And I will say this, because I've read so many of his books, some of his books just blend right into each other. They feel like the same book. So if you're planning on reading all of John Saul, do a little research. And hopefully that research starts with the recommendations I'm about to give you. John Saul, the reason I was initially drawn to him was way back when I was a baby gay and I first came out. I was looking for gay authors, specifically gay horror authors. And at the time, this would have been early 2000s, like 2000s. There weren't a ton out there. There was John Saul, there was Douglas Clegg, Clive Barker were the ones that I could just think off the top of my head. You did have a lot of queer horror with Poppy Z. Bright, who explored queer themes in their books. But there wasn't a ton. And John Saul was widely available and still is. You go to a used bookstore, you trip over his books. So he was one of those people that I gravitated to. And he doesn't actually talk a lot about queer themes in his books. His books tend to focus more on middle America, families. You get a lot of fractured families, but typical family units or single moms, stuff like that. Although we will get into one book that does include probably his first representation of a gay character. It was a pretty good one too. Oh no, I take that back. In one of his worst books, which is part of the reason this whole recommendation sparked off. Punish the Sinners has audio recordings of a gay priest orgy in one of the most boring books I've ever read in my life. And the reason this started off is there is a great horror blog. If you love old school horror books, especially if you love the old school cover art, there's a great blog called Too Much Horror Fiction, which is Will Erickson's blog. He worked with Grady Hendrix on Paperbacks from Hell, the book that started the paperback craze up again when people were collecting like crazy. That's kind of died down. And he never seemed all that thrilled. He knows a lot about paperback horror, but he is very critical because he's consumed so much of it. And I'm not surprised he doesn't like John Saul. It's not his cup of tea. John Saul is comfort read territory. His writing is very simple. He's not trying to dive into the human experience. A lot of his books are very surface level with that. But he reviewed, of all the John Saul books he could pick, he picked Punish the Sinners. And people even in his comments were like, that's not where to start. That's not a good one. But he's not interested in reading anymore. Saul, and I get it. Saul's not for a lot of people. Especially if you have read a lot of paperback horror. He's a great beginner horror author. If you are someone who's like, ooh, maybe this is a genre I like, check him out. But just go in. It's a beach read. It's a poolside read. It's a curl up on your couch during a rainy day read. You know, he's not trying to reinvent the wheel. John Saul, not Will Erickson. But reading that kind of made me go, well, if I was going to tell someone, hey, if you want to give John Saul a fair shake, what are the books to start with? So those are the books we're going to talk about today. I have 4 books. Um, Most of them are actually from his later works, starting in 2001 to 2008. I have one of his older books. The reason I don't include a lot of his older books is his older books, while enjoyable, do fall into template a lot more and trope a lot more than the later ones. The later ones he started, you could tell he was getting bored with the old stuff, so he was trying to play with some new stuff. And if you see me looking over to the side, I actually have I have the Goodreads page with all his books on it, so I referenced that for years and scores and stuff like that. Yeah, so the book that actually really got me enjoying John Saul, because the first book I read from him I did not like. It was a book called Nightshade. It was like a kind of gothic, torrid family affair. It had like incest and murder and all that fun stuff. But it didn't blow me away. And actually, I probably read it at the worst time because I was kind of going through this, like a lot of kids go through it where you get a little more conservative. I was probably like 14. And I was in a conservative environment, so mentally I was I was trying to cover up the fact that I was a big old flaming homo, and I was acting a little more conservative, and I kind of reacted to the book that way. If I read it now, I'd probably be like, oh, this is fine. But I was a little shocked, awed at the shocking content. When I got older, I decided to check him out again, and I picked the Manhattan Hunt Club, which I think personally is one of his best books. It is definitely more thriller than it is horror. The general gist is a modern take, as so many have done before, of the most dangerous game, the classic story that everyone had to read in like junior high. But the general gist is a person is kidnapped. They are taken to the sewers of New York, of Manhattan, and they are hunted by a bunch of bloodthirsty, wealthy elites. And as he's making his way through these sewers, he is kind of finding himself in this whole community that lives under the streets of New York. And some of them are there to help, some of them are working with the hunters, and it's this really fun adventure thriller. And there are shocking moments, and there's peril and all that fun stuff. But it is definitely more thriller. But that is one that I remember I read that in like a day. A lot of his books, even if they look longer, you can read them pretty quickly. They fly by. His writing is pretty quick. Unless you're reading Punish the Sinners, which read like a brick. I'm going to keep picking on that book because it is really bad. That was only a second book, though. So, yeah. Manhattan Hunt Club, though, it's just great pacing. You're not getting amazing characterization because the book is a hit the ground running kind of book. You are dropped in the middle of the action and the characters have to go because they have someone out there to kill them. And the threat is throughout the entire book. And you meet some interesting characters, especially the people who are living in the communities under the streets, who, some of them, the good ones especially, who are trying to help him out, who put themselves at risk to help him out. And you kind of get an idea that it actually becomes a pretty well-rounded community. Like this, you get a well-rounded view of this community and how they work, which I was not expecting in that book. But yeah, great place to start is Manhattan Hunt Club. If you want something a little more classic horror, this one is another one of my favorites. This one, obviously, because I'm recommending it. If you want a little more classic horror, something gives big Rosemary's Baby vibes. Midnight Voices. This one was early 2000s as well. It is wonderfully creepy, evil step-parent. A woman remarries. She has 2 kids. The man is wealthy. They move into an apartment or in this amazing old brownstone in New York. And there's all these old, crazy, weirdo residents there. And there's something going on. And it becomes pretty obvious pretty quick what's going on. But the big problem is for her, she notices the kids are getting sick. They're getting weak. And the people around her are getting a little more spry. a little more lively. Um, and yeah, no big twists, no big shocks there. It's just a really fun, old school horror story. Definitely, like I said, Rosemary's Baby vibes, but no one's having sex with Satan. You know, you're getting spared that. So, no one's getting boned by Baphomet. But it's a really fun story. I had a blast reading it. And that is actually the one, if people are like, hey, what's a good horror novel to start with John Saul? That's the one I go for. Over Manhattan Hunt Club, because that's a little more thriller. If they want horror, that's the one I go for. It's definitely one of his better structured horror stories. The main characters are really enjoyable. The threat, while obvious, is pretty fun, and it's not something he had really done previously, so it stands out in his library. And that was one, totally recommend it. And actually, the reviews for it are pretty good on Goodreads. I had it pulled up. So, Manhattan Hunt Club was, if you look at it on here, it has a 4.0 average rating out of 6,021 ratings. That's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good. Now, obviously, he's not getting like, 10 or 130,000 ratings, but 4.0 is pretty good out of that amount. Midnight Voices, if I scroll down a little bit, I saw the next one that we talked about. 3.78 out of 3,644 ratings. So, still, pretty solid score. And I agree with these. They're not 5-star reads. This is not life-changing horror novels. But if you want to have fun, especially if reading these types of books helps with things like anxiety, like they do for me, because it's weird to call them cozy because horrible things happen in these books, but they are kind of cozy. In the same way Stephen King is kind of cozy to me because it's a familiar writing style. Not to compare King's style with Saul's style, they're very different. But it's that kind of familiar, homey writing style. It's the same thing I felt with Ruby Jean Jensen. It's something, especially for someone my age, where you grew up kind of finding these paperbacks around the house, or you were on vacation and you needed something to read, and this is what they sold in the gift shop. So this was something that you pick up, and your parents wouldn't think twice about it because it didn't look that lurid. That definitely is where these fall. So far we've covered Manhattan Hunt Club, and we have covered Midnight Voices. So we're going to go into the one book I'm going to recommend from his older library. Now, I'm not saying all his older books are bad. They're not. Even his first book, Suffer the Children, is a good book. That one hits pretty hard, and that's why I don't recommend people start there, because there's some stuff in that book that, if I remember correctly, gets kind of hinky. But I would say of the older books, the one that I always gravitated to because it has the most amazing cover, which you will be seeing on screen shortly, is The Unloved. Oh, look at that cover. It's such a great cover. And luckily it is on one of my favorite John Saul books. This one is a little more classic Saul. So a man is estranged from his mother, but she's dying, so he takes his family, his wife and 2 kids, to go visit her. And along the way, he also is seeing his sister who lives there, who's kind of, she had potential to be a ballerina, but her career kind of stalled. I think because of an injury. It's been a while since I read it. And you get all the family drama. Grandma is a raging bitch, and lots of tension there. But when Grandma dies, or when his mom dies, so the kid's grandma, because the kids are always in peril. The kids are always in jeopardy. When his mom dies, he is forced to stay at the house or they lose the house, which means his sister would be homeless. So they are forced to stay there. And people's personalities start to shift. Is it something supernatural? Is there a curse on the family? You get into all of it. This one is not as popular as the first two when it comes to ratings. It's still 3.88 out of 5,050. Or no. Nope. I'm looking at the wrong one. When the wind blows. This is still a 3.88 out of 4,797 ratings. That's not bad. And it's the book, again, this leans more into like V.C. Andrews light. You're not getting if you've read V.C. Andrews, that can get quite brutal. It's quite dark and oppressive. This does not get to that level. You're also not getting some of the more shocking elements from a V.C. Andrews book. incest comes up in his books a couple times, not on this one. Um, but it's a fun yarn. It's a fun little gothic yarn where it's just a family drama mixed with potentially supernatural forces drive everyone nuts, and things come to a head, and people are having to like run for their life. Yeah, it's a blast. And look at that cover. Look at that cover. That is a great freaking cover. And this was one, so we're going to move back because this one I actually wasn't originally going to include in the list. And in a previous version of this video, I started talking about it, and I was so excited to talk about it that I decided to include it. And I'm reshooting the video because of some other stuff. Like, I felt that video was a little bloated, but this one's pretty bloated too. So, but yeah, the one that I didn't initially plan on including, but I'm going to include, is his second to last novel called Faces of Fear. This is definitely leaning more into slasher territory. There's more violence, there's more shock. This is similar to Midnight Voices, that you have the evil step-parent. This one, the step-parent is more obviously evil very early on. A woman gets divorced when her husband comes out as gay. She remarries to a popular plastic surgeon who's very successful. And she and her daughter move in with him. And turns out plastic surgeon married her to get to her daughter, and he becomes obsessed with her and transforming her into what he thinks can be this amazing beauty. And it gets very creepy, which includes him talking a 16-year-old into getting breast implants, which her father like flips out about. It's the main reason I was drawn to this Faces of Fear initially is because it was one of the few times Saul, who is openly gay, includes an openly gay character in his book. Because the husband, the one who is their ex-husband, I'm not using names because I can't remember it off the top of my head. The ex-husband who comes out as gay is a character throughout the book, and he's actually like there to try and protect his daughter. That was what initially drew me to the book. Was Saul finally writing a gay character? What kept me was this really over-the-top, gory, fun, body horror-esque type story. It's really fun. Leans more violent than the other ones, but really, really, really fun. So if you want something with a little more of an edge, not too much, none of his books we're not talking splatter here, but if you want something with a little bit more of an edge, Faces of Fear is not a bad place to start. And as you could tell, I pushed really towards the end of his career, because his last book, House of Reckoning, which not his best, really middle of the pack, came out in 2009, and he really has not published anything since. He has had some comic book adaptations of some of his books, and I think there was a video game of the Blackstone Chronicles, which was a serialized book series that he did back when everyone was doing serialized book series, because Stephen King did it with The Green Mile, and that was a huge hit, so everyone jumped on that bandwagon. So he tried it, and that one actually, I've heard it was fairly successful. I have not read it. I tried, and it didn't really grab me, but I was also younger when I tried to read it, so maybe I'll try it again someday. All right, so there are my John Saul recommendations for you. Take them or leave them. I will say there are some books I will instantly say do not start with. Don't read at all, really. There's really only two that I would just say do not even bother. Obviously, the one I've been ranting about, Punish the Sinners. It's so damn boring. Takes a really interesting idea and just crap. It basically, the book is this new priest transfers to this school, to a new parish, and when he shows up, this group of mean girls who have been terrorizing this young woman start to, I gotta use internet speak for this one. Ooh, my millennial brain doesn't want to do it, but okay. Start to unalive themselves for no reason. And it's all tied to this weird cabal of priests who have, it's not good. And it's an interesting plot idea. It's an interesting concept, just does not go anywhere. And actually, the other book that I would say avoid completely is The Devil's Labyrinth, which is a bunch of kids who are who are at a school, and they are being used by this priest who's actually undercover. jihadist, if I remember. It's really not good and kind of borderline offensive at times. It felt like almost a reaction to 9/11 because basically, I'm going to spoil that one right now, and you might want to read it for the batshittery, but I just did not enjoy it. Basically, the whole plot is they are trying to brainwash these kids into becoming surprise bombers to kill the Pope. It didn't work. The book did not work, and the idea was kind of dumb to begin with. And when you read it, then the reason I say it feels like a response to 9/11 is anyone who lived through that time period can remember that everyone's patriotism went through the freaking roof, and you got a lot of that "Oorah, America" in everything. And I get why. I'm not going to say that I don't understand why, but it comes out in this book in a really ugly way. Because not all of that reaction, that national pride came out in a really ugly way. This one did, and it did not age well. I remember when I was listening to it, I was just like, because I listened to that book, and I was just like, this is not good. There is a lot of rage here that just did not form into a good story. I wonder what other people think. I'm gonna actually look that one up since I'm here, since I have this. It has a 3.5. So it's not his worst. Let me see if I can find Punish the Sinners. That is a 3.8. So more people like Punish the Sinners than Devil's Labyrinth. I would say, for your own sanity, avoid both of them. The other thing I will say with Saul is, as much as I enjoy a lot of his books, if you read a lot of him in a row, especially his older books, some of them will start to blend together. I have had instances where I would pick up a new book. I think this happened with Darkness. I picked it up. I was reading it. I'm like, I know I haven't read this book before, but I've read this book before. And this is not uncommon with authors who push out a lot of books. So John Saul was publishing from 1977 until 2009, and he had a book out almost every year. That's a lot of books. And when that happens, they tend to follow they'll jump from trope to trope to trope. So if you, like all his books that deal with schools or government-run schools with special kids, they just blend right together for me. A lot of government experiments on teenagers, stuff like that. Those all kind of homogenize. It's really, not all of them are great, but he does have some really fun gems in there. There's even more of his older ones that I didn't really touch on. If you dive deeper, without going into too much with the plot descriptions, Hellfire was a really fun one. That's more of a domestic drama, and you have the bad influence kids, stuff like that. That's a fun one. Comes to Blind Fury is another fun one where a girl is possessed, or there's something with a ghost, an old pilgrim ghost who is blind, who is getting revenge on people. That one's really fun. He's got some fun ones. You just space them out. Give yourself some space. And there's some other ones that are totally off the wall. Black Lightning is a woman who gets possessed by a serial killer. That one is a whole blast. It's not as good as the ones I recommended, but he's got a wide library. So there's plenty of places to look, and he does cover a pretty wide array of horror and thriller topics. So just do a little research, but I would definitely recommend those 4 books. And I have rambled on about John Saul long enough. If you guys have an idea of what I think of his work. Do I think he's the most amazing author ever? No. Do I think some of his books are freaking fun and worth your time? Yes, I do. All right. So as I send you guys on your way, I've been trying to do new videos every Sunday morning. They publish 8:30 Eastern time in the morning, and I've been pretty consistent about it. So hopefully I stick with that. I say we, and it's just me working on the channel. It's me sitting in my office. If you like this, give it a like. If you want to keep seeing more stuff from me, stuff like this, I've got more recommendation videos planned. Just hit the subscribe and the bell so you can be notified when new videos are coming up. Otherwise, keep enjoying what you're reading, love what you love, and have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening, and I will see you guys in the next one.